The EBS Power Steering Gear Oil Equipment is a multi-purpose automotive fluid service equipment that can be used for any combination of power steering and/or gear oil service. The equipment is 110-volt AC powered converted to 12-volt DC for all service operations. The fused and lighted master on and off switch is on the side of the equipment. The control panel has 3 lighted switches, one for vacuum and one for each of the new fluid tanks. The equipment has two 2-gallon integral new fluid tanks visible at the front of the equipment and a 2.5-gallon removable waste tank accessed from the back of the equipment. The new fluid tanks can be used for 2 types of power steering fluid, 2 types of gear oil, or one for power steering and one for gear oil. Whatever choice is made for an individual tank, continue to use the same fluid in that tank. For a gear oil service, remove the access plug on the gear housing and check for damaged fluid. Make any repairs necessary. Next, add any cleaning chemicals, replace the access plug, and drive the vehicle for 1 to 2 miles while cycling gears. Once back at the shop, remove the access plug and insert the vacuum hose into the housing access. Turn vacuum switch on and vacuum as much gear fluid as possible. A hook is attached to the vacuum and fill line to hold service hose convenient to the gear housing. As much fluid is removed in this manner as would be removed by removing the whole access plate. After all fluid has been removed, turn the vacuum pump off and replace the vacuum service hose on the equipment. Fill equipment new fluid tank with the appropriate gear oil and add any fluid additives such as limited slip fluid as required. Insert the fill tube into the access hole in the gear housing, turn the appropriate fill button on the equipment, and refill the gear housing using the handgun to control the amount. Turn fill pump off on completion, replace the access plug, and return fill service hose to the equipment. The service is now complete. The typical service time is 5 to 7 minutes. To perform a power steering fluid service, check the condition of the power steering fluid and correct any problems. Insert any cleaning chemical into the power steering reservoir and run engine as suggested by the cleaning chemical producer while turning the steering wheel lock to lock. Turn the engine off. Service can now be completed in one of 2 different manners as followed. In method 1, the reservoir is vacuumed and then refilled with new fluid. Turn the vacuum pump on. Turn the vacuum pump off, and then fill the reservoir with new fluid. The engine is started and the steering wheel is turned from lock to lock, and then the engine will be turned off. The reservoir is then again vacuumed and then filled with new fluid. Once again, we start the engine and turn the steering wheel from lock to lock, and then the engine is turned off. This cycling continues until the new fluid amount selected for service has been replaced. In method 2, the engine is left off. We will put the vacuum and the fill line both in the reservoir, but first we want to vacuum out what's in the reservoir. We will now add the fill line. The fill line is inserted near the bottom of the reservoir, and both the vacuum and the fill pump are turned on. The vacuum pump is stronger than the fill pump to keep the reservoir from overfilling. While this exchange is taking place, the steering wheel can be turned back and forth from lock to lock. The service is complete when the new fluid amount selected for the service has been replaced. Turn all switches off and return hoses to the equipment. Check the proper fluid levels and correct as necessary using the vacuum or fill pumps. The service is now complete.